Hey, welcome to MaryBird's Backyard Garden Podcast. Today we're here with Jeff.
And Mary.
And we're going to talk gardening and some other little stuff too for you. So I have some treats for you. Just to let you know, we are located in Central Texas. So when we're talking gardening, we're going to mainly be talking Central Texas type gardening and in our zone. But I'm going to let Mary do that. Just a little background. We're a husband and wife team. I'm the infrastructure guy. I move all the rocks and put the fences up, and Mary does all the gardening, architectural items, and she's the expert on the gardening. I'm just the hired help. So
there's no experts
here. Well, we do want to welcome you, Mary. So why don't you give us a little bit of an idea of what you've been doing lately? We are approaching here in Texas our cold weather time. So how are we working on the garden? What are we doing there?
We're in the Texas Hill Country in Central Texas, like my husband said, like Jeff said. And we've recently been changed in our growing zone to 9A, which doesn't have a huge impact. But it means some things may survive the winter better nowadays since the climate is getting warmer. But what most people are most concerned about is covering their plants for the really cold snap like we just had last night. You weren't cold, were you?
A little bit. I did have a question. So I've seen some people covering stuff. I've seen some very flimsy, almost see-through type coverings, and then I've seen a little bit of the heavier, and we've seen some even where the wind has just kind of blown them up. So what's your recommendation on that when we're covering our plants?
When you're covering your plants, you can use all sorts of material. The flimsy material is probably a form of like a polypropylene sheeting. Maybe they got it at a home supply store, like Home Depot or Lowe's or somewhere like that. They also sell blankets specifically for plants. But you could use old comforters, sheets. You could use towels, anything. The most important thing really that I see most people do is they'll cover the plant, but they want to tighten it to the trunk of the plant so that it's not reaching the ground. The most important thing you want to do is to drape that covering and secure it to the ground so that the heat from the earth will come up around the stem and leaves. And you'll capture more heat around the roots.
Oh, that makes sense.
And the other thing is, it's very interesting, but if you have a very tender plant and you're able to do a covering, a small airspace, and another covering over that and secure it, you will increase your zone of survival by 2 zones. Here we're 9A, or really we were 8B. So most plants, I would still follow the rules for 8B, but you could go to, say, 6B if you're able to follow those. So like if you have a tender citrus and you were able to do the double covering, you would be very fine during the winter.
So from a zone standpoint, so you said we're 9A now? Is that right?
We're currently 9A.
So as the numbers get larger and smaller, like if we were going up north, would the numbers get smaller then?
Smaller. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
Interesting.
They get smaller, and then they increase as you go down towards South Texas, down into the valley, on down towards Brownsville.
So I know we're out there at the garden centers looking for plants. I know you're always looking to on the labels and on the tags to see where they're hardy and kind of where they go. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of what we're talking about then, right? Is making sure that we're finding plants that will survive best here in our zone.
Yes. Okay. Or if you're looking for a container plant, you want to look for it to be hardy to 2 zones lower than your zone. That way, it's likely to survive the winter in a container. So, for instance, we would look for plants for 6B to grow in a container.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. So what if, now we talked a little bit about kind of general items that are good to know when winter starts hitting. What have we done here recently?
Our garden mainly, my main focus has been if the plant survives the winter, then it's a good plant. It's something in the perennial beds. And most of our plants, we have a lot of natives. We do attract a lot of pollinators for our area. So I tend to leave the plants up to shelter all the different pollinators and all the different wildlife. And then I won't trim the plant until further into the winter. Having the plant growing and covering the roots offers shelter. If the leaves fall off the tree, I tend to leave them for the winter so they could help shelter the roots.
Okay.
And we haven't really run out to cover too much because a lot of our plants are slated for growing in our area.
Okay, nice. Any other tips or anything that we need to do? Is there anything that you and I need to get out in the garden and do now that we had a quick cold snap here? We got really cold really quick, and I know it'll heat up again here in another day or so, but what should we be doing?
This year, we had some pretty substantial rains before we had our cold snap. Now, in a year where maybe it's more dry, I would definitely recommend watering very well. You know that cold snap is coming. Water your plants prior to the cold snap. That's another thing to help the plant survive. Even though most of your plants are probably dormant, there's still some things that are going on under the ground in the soil that you want to maintain a good environment for.
Okay.
So that's a big tip. That's one of my best.
Nice. I like it. So one other thing that I noticed, and obviously I did more than notice because I helped you set it up, but we did set up some shelving and some indoor growing lights not too long ago. We had a nice, I think it was 2 or 3 shelves, and we got some lighting that strung together, put a timer on it, so we made sure the lights come off and on at a certain time in one of the rooms. But can you tell us a little bit about what we're trying to attempt to do there?
Well, as we get into the cold weather, which doesn't last as long in Texas as it does other places, you do want to start a lot of your spring gardening during the winter. So, for instance, December 15th, I put in tomato seeds, and we put up Barina plant lights on some shelves in the growing room. And those are going to help us to start. We have 2 really good growing seasons here in our area. We have spring. Then during the hot part of the year, we just try to keep going. And then we have fall gardening. So during the winter, I'm trying to start seeds under lights. I'm really a novice at this, but we've been doing pretty good. We started about 8 tomato plants so far, and I'm looking to start some more here this coming week. Now, I did have a problem.
Yeah, I was going to ask you before we came in and started talking on the podcast. Very rare do we have to turn our heat on here in Texas, but we definitely have had a cold snap, and we definitely had to turn our heat on. We were way down there. We've been in the teens here for a day or so, and so Mary, I know you brought in the plants that we had under the grow lights, and I think maybe a little bit of a surprise kind of happened. I know that when you came in, you were a little surprised that I think because we turned the heater on, I think it had a little bit of effect on the plants that we have. And why don't you tell us a little bit about what happened? And hey, this is, that's what we do. We learn as we go along here and try to pass that along to you guys. But what happened here when we had to turn the heater on?
Yes. So my tomatoes were going really well, growing great kinds. I'd say they're like maybe 4 inches tall now. Some of them are maybe a little taller than that. And they look so healthy. They were just beautiful, leafing out. And then the cold snap, and we turned the heater on upstairs for the past 2 days because we were worried about the pipes.
Right.
We didn't want freeze or anything like that. And what it did was dried the soil out before, I wasn't prepared for that.
Right.
And I'm using some bottom watering trays here, so I didn't check. But maybe I caught a few of them in time. I know that with tomatoes especially, it's a pretty significant setback to have any sort of moisture issues. So we're going to have to just see what we could do.
Well, it's interesting. I think we were both surprised when you came in because I looked at them a few times over the last week or so, and they looked like they were going great.
They were going great.
Commented to you how nice they looked up here.
The ones that had the most trouble were the cherry tomatoes.
Oh, okay.
The ones that seem to have held on pretty good are the Black Beauty tomato and the Solar Flare tomato from Baker Creek Seeds. So we'll just have to keep an eye on it and see what happens. See if they recover.
Well, we have the setup. We have, as I said, the infrastructure in place.
Four shelves of lighting.
We do. So we can definitely get some more started. And it's early in the winter season here.
I did want to talk a little bit about that too. Let me move these out of the way.
Okay. So that is one tip. Do you guys remember if you are growing inside and you have your heater on, I think it'd be a good idea to keep a pretty close eye on the seeds and the plants that you have going there, just to make sure that they're still going well and still have water.
It's a learning event for me this year because watering seeds is one of the biggest challenges. You don't want to overwater because then you will cause them to do dampening off, I think it's called, and they just kind of fall over. So, it's always a learning type situation. And as I find more information about it and more ways to check to see how you're doing, I'll definitely pass them along.
Great.
But right now, one of the things that is great for our area is that we can start our warm season flowers. That would be your zinnias and gomphrenias and sunflowers and because I would say Gaillardia, perhaps. You might try starting that. Salvias, perhaps. And you could start those seeds indoors right now. That's very good. And also, I wanted to look up here because I am using this year the Texas Gardener 2024 Planning Guide and Calendar. My husband got me a subscription to Texas Gardener this year. And tomatoes are the big thing in December and January for Texas gardeners. So I would recommend this magazine. It's got a lot of tips. And I also want you to know that this is a very, very good time for in-ground sowing of things like pansies, dianthus, kale. You could still put those in the ground, even though we're experiencing cold temperatures.
That's interesting.
And you want to feed them every 2 to 3 weeks with a little liquid fertilizer.
Okay.
Also, you could start lots of seeds indoors. Your broccoli, beets, cabbage, any of your cold crops are very good spring crops. So that's what we're going to be doing. Okay, very good. And we're going to be keeping an eye on the heater, right? Make sure that they don't dry out. On the water.
On the water. All right. Very good. So what else? Do you have anything else for us today?
What do you like to see in the garden, Jeffrey? What are you?
I am more of a flower person. Don't get too excited about the veggies and things. I like to kind of look out in the backyard and in the garden that you put together and like to see colors. I like to see the birds coming. We have a lot of lizards here. We have a lot of critters in the backyard in general, but they're lizards and frogs and birds, butterflies. Yep, absolutely. So I really like seeing that. I like going back there. It's kind of nice and soothing to just sit back there and watch. And of course, we have our 2 puppies that like to chase all the lizards and whatever else they find back there. They never catch them, but they do have fun chasing them. So for me, I think I'm more of a flower person.
I know that as we have built the garden, and we really are pretty new at it. We just put in the garden in 2019, I believe. Mm-hmm. We definitely have added roses.
I'm a rose guy. I like my roses.
You like your roses. Well, Interestingly enough, if your roses are repeat bloomers, January is a very good time to get out there and do a bit of pruning on your roses. You don't want to prune spring flowering roses or shrubs, but January and February here in our area are very good to be cutting back your ornamental grasses, your shrubs, many of your trees that you would like that are not spring bloomers. Okay. So, yep, that's another thing we have.
Looks like we have some things to look
going
forward
on
to.
With your favorite flower. A little bit of work for you.
Well, very good. That's very nice. So I know we do like to kind of also add in like a subject of the week, whether it's a plant or a book or something else that we've learned. So what do you have for us today, Mary?
Today, I wanted to talk about technology in the garden, or really, this is a house plant. We're going to talk about technology in this house plant. Jeff is my IT guy, so he's going to help me out on this issue quite a bit. We found a very striking plant that is only identified as large foliage when we went shopping the other day. It just says large foliage, so we don't know what it is. And I was looking at ways to find out what it is, and there was an app that was recommended on several sites. And I was going to see if I could use this app to identify this plant. The app is called PlantNet. And let's see what it comes up with here. All right, let me see. I'm looking at this. I've tried iNaturalist, and it did not come up with the...
Oh, I'm surprised. That's usually pretty accurate when we've used that in the past.
We have used that in the past, yes. Well, here we go. This is called PlantNet. Under World Flora, it is called Alocasia Sanderiana W. Bull. Interesting. Okay. Very nice. I'm pretty excited about using this app.
Well, good.
Have you tried using it? We have used iNaturalist to identify other things.
I've used iNaturalist. I've not used that one, but then again, I kind of leave the plant stuff to you. I'll do the heavy work. I'll move it around for you and build something for you, but I do kind of leave the plant stuff to you when we're doing that. Well,
let's see how we're supposed to grow it. We'll have to look that up and come back. Common names of this is Polly.
Very nice.
Chris plant. And we're going to have to look up how to take care of it, and then I'll get back with you about that.
Well, we'll look it up, and then we also have a blog that accompanies our podcast. It's MaryBird'sGarden.com. We'll put that information out there as well. I made a picture of the plant for you. You can kind of see what we're talking about. Maybe we should put a little picture of those dried out plants for them too. What do you think? Show them what happens when you take your eye off the ball for a minute.
Oh my goodness. I agree with you there.
Okay.
I think we could do that.
Very good. Very good. Well, we appreciate you guys joining us here. Like I said, we do have a companion blog website. It's MaryBird'sGarden.com. We appreciate you guys joining the podcast. We hope you subscribe, and we'll plan to do these on a weekly basis and give you some updates and kind of let you go on a journey with us as we go through our backyard gardening. By no means, I think, are we expert. Mary is very good at this stuff, but we're all just kind of trial and error when we're doing these.
Trial and error.
Yeah, and it's kind of nice just to pass things along. I hope you guys learned something from it as well.
Thank you, Jeff. I couldn't have said it better.
Very good. Okay, guys, thanks again for joining. Hope you join us next week, too, and we'll see you next week on the Mary Bird's Backyard Garden podcast. Thank you.
Thank you.